We had noticed symptoms as early as October of 2014 in things that I would refer to as cognitive glitches, where things just wouldn't make sense, but it would be it was very sporadic. And we thought maybe it was just from fatigue, so we saw our primary care physician in the fall of 2014. And he thought maybe it was fatigue or just stress levels because of the things that we were doing at the time with caring for aging parents, with losing one parent in 2014 and another 2016 and another 2017. He thought maybe it was just that process of caring for and losing so many of our family members back to back.
I think when I first started feeling that there was something bigger going on, I had initially, while I was at work, I didn't read it as there was something wrong with me. And maybe that's because these things happen so gradually. And as she began telling me what was going on, especially the thing of where she's experiencing pain, and even though I see it doesn't register, that was really one of the most difficult things. And that's one of the most dear gifts of God, to put me in that role, to be a caretaker for my wife, to realize that I'm missing it, and that there are places where I'm not taking care of her. It was really heartbreaking, and so I definitely wanted to find out what was going on from there. That's just one of the was so hard.
So when we started seeing the executive functioning things, the not noticing when I was hurting, the quiet and aloof social things, and then there's this, he started a tremor in his right hand, and then his tremor also then moved to his left hand. And when I saw that, I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back for me, was there's got to be something wrong. And I was really afraid that he had what his dad had. And so we go to see the neurologist for the first appointment, and he does about 3 hours of cognitive testing that day. And he gets to the end of it, and he said, well, I can tell you what it's not, and it's not Alzheimer's. And Mark and I both just were like this collective of the sigh of relief that it wasn't what his dad had. It wasn't Alzheimer's. And then he turned right around and said, and I think I know what it is, and that your dad was probably misdiagnosed. And what it is behavioral variant frontotemporal dementia. And hearing that it was what his dad had had, and that it was dementia, or that it is dementia, I just started crying, shaking, and I couldn't stop.
There was a feeling of, when the doctor first said, well, it's not Alzheimer's, it's this huge feeling of relief, and then this realization of, oh wait, whatever it is it as awful as Alzheimer's? And then we found out that it is. And we walked out of we were just overwhelmed, sitting in the office. And as we walked outside of the office and stepped into the hall, we held on to each other and just started sobbing, just completely overwhelmed with where we were and what we were facing.
The prognosis for FTD, it's terminal. There are no treatments, there are no cures. And the life expectancy for him from onset of symptoms is 6 to 8 years. So that means for him 3 or 4 years before the Lord takes him home, statistically. Certainly we can't know, he could outlive all of us. We can't know what God will do, but statistically that's what it looks like.
As we look on this season of life, FTD, in my life, and what that means to me, what it means to Robin, there's a sense of calling, and it involves suffering. And if I wouldn't choose it, but that God would be at work in our lives so that other people are seeing that work. They're seeing Christ at work in our lives, doing things, bringing peace where we couldn't naturally be at peace, bringing joy where it feels like, well, how could joy exist there? And so this season of FTD, while not something we would request, has been allowed or chosen by God to be a part of our testimony. He is not surprised.
For so long, I felt like we were kind of in shock, and the overriding emotion was just sorrow, just deep, deep sorrow, this agonizing thing where I couldn't get my eyes off of the reality that we won't grow old together. And so there was this sense in me of clinging to Mark. At the same time, I was clinging to the cross. And I don't know, about 6 weeks ago, we were in church at Christ Central, and we were in worship, and I don't even remember this song we were singing. It's one I had never heard before, but it was about Christ's forgiveness because of his righteousness. And while we were singing this song, I had this picture that Mark and I were walking together, holding hands, and all I could see was just this field of green, and then this break between where I was and where the Lord was, just standing with his arms open wide. And I was holding Mark's hand, and I walked him up to the edge of this break in the field, and I looked down, and when I looked up, Mark was on the other side of that that break between us and the Lord. And he was now on the other side, where I couldn't go, and was enveloped into an embrace by his Savior, where we all long to be one of these days. And I knew in that moment I was going to be okay, because he's going to be okay. Because ultimately, when his suffering is finished and this disease does all the terrible things that it's going to do, he's going to go home, and he's going to be embraced by the Father. And I will rejoice at his homecoming. And then I don't want to cling to him. I don't want to hold him back for my needs to have my husband here, when what I want for him is to be whole and healthy and free.